It's a big thing.
Hello, good day. I can hear you.
No, I mean, like, was I only working only the country? They're like 2 hours away. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was really it's definitely there. Yesterday I was wearing something striped. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, it's true that like in the summer. It's really, like, really. Well, it's just. So not now, not the weekends. Sorry. No, sure. I'm doing this. It's about the table.
Hello, this is Mariam, the interpreter for Arabic.
Hi, Marian. This is Catherine. It's good to have you with us. Hi, Yasmin.
Hi, I thought you starting soon. Okay.
Apologies, a mess up on our side with the time difference with South Africa. You're not apparently presently on CET, which is aligned most of the year. So the event will actually start in 55 minutes.
Yes.
So if we can assign, I mean, I can assign you now as you like. If you want to log back on in 40 minutes, we can assign you interpreter.
I have no problem to stay online. I have no problem.
As you prefer.
I have no problem. This is Mariam, the interpreter for Arabic, with Yasmin.
Okay, Yasmin, hi, good day. So sorry about that.
No problem at all. Luckily, we checked.
It's good to have you with us, as usual.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Looks amazing today.
Yeah, it should be a nice, a really exciting event. Let's see. So I see,
I think I'm gonna leave because Mariam, you just need to rename your device so it's not, we're not using the same link. But I will leave until you get assigned and I will rejoin.
Yes, no problem, Yasmin. I will rename my name. Thank you very much for letting me know about that. Thank you.
So once you're renamed Miriam, I can assign you.
Very lucky. Very lucky. Human.
So Miriam, I think you should be set up now as the Arabic interpreter.
Yes, she is, Catherine. Thank you so much.
Super, thank you.
It's perfect, Miriam. Thank you.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, no.
Thank you so much.
My house is right.
Oh, nice.
And the guy. Yeah, yeah. Okay. And the connection was fixed, like, hello. lovely famous.
Oh, Hi, I'm Refugee. Nice to meet you. How are you? Nice to meet you. Very fun. Yeah, please put your number there. We need to speak.
Does that help with that?
Water.
Oh,
I'm not asking you to get on the roof now.
enough.
Yeah, me too. I'm very
It's good. It was good that, yeah, when people stayed on, we ran over a bit. We stayed on to take questions. I thought it was really good sign. Yeah, moved into the game. Two comments to make, and it worked well. We were talking about give a sense of both ecosystem, you know. So I mean, I always have measured expectations, but I would say it was better than I thought, and people were disciplined. Delegation getting bigger, so but I think it works. So yeah, it's good.
No, actually needs to see the.
It's good.
Do you have time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see him coming.
This is the presentation. And it's not.
Hey, going. I know. Nice to meet you next week. Nice to meet you next week. I just got. Hi.
They told me you're aware. Yeah.
For the first one, we're trying to do we're already like the challenge of yes, the points.
And also, I'm.
Yeah, we're
You can send it too, but just in case. Yesterday, we got started, he was working.
If you're on.
Down very nice. Involved, and I'm like, wow, I'm gonna have. I got to talk about it. It's not only that, it's happening on this place, like, feel advised to some colleagues. Original plan was to do the project, and I think that's how you know that.
Good, nice.
Well, that was just 5 minutes. So,
Yes.
back then they had those. Various.
Yes.
Yeah, unless you get part of the knowledge, kind of, unless you get the question.
Yep. How are they? You know, no, in Spanish. I thought. The last 5 years. No, I live in Paris. And I've been there for 2 years. And then. I don't think the height, like, if you are checking it. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, lot of members for. Different jobs in southern Germany. But now I'm maybe you want to write it down. We had to find it. Yeah, we can. It's a very important. And one of the people that yeah. And
All this visual identity. Values, but that's why we're trying to apply.
So I just now have to do it.
Hello, stranger, how you doing? It's like, just put it there, but I just think of this. So that's valid.
They're probably just stuck with this. I have. See, I have. Yeah. Zero.
Okay, so. Yeah.
Haven't lost.
Very good. Thanks.
I mean, maybe.
No, she thought she was. It's almost like. Yes.
Test. Ah, ah. Ah, ah, test. 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 Ah, 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 ah. Ah, ah. Ah, mm, mm. Test. Ah, ah. Ah, mm, ah, mm. Ah, ah. Test. Test. Ah, ah. Test. Test. Tester comment? Clairement. Can you test? Someone is okay with the sound in Zoom. Test micro. Ah, c'est pas assez fort. Ah, ok. Alors, ouais, je demande un truc. Test. Est-ce que là, c'est mieux? 1, 2, test.
That works.
It's okay?
Yes, that's okay. That's great. Thank you, merci.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think we're trying to get started as we've got a lot to get through. But firstly, to say it's fantastic to see so many people here, some familiar faces, but also many new faces. And in addition to the 120 or so we have in the room, we also have 240 people watching the event online. My name is Chris Nash, and I'm the director of the European Network on Statelessness. And it's my pleasure, on behalf of all the co-sponsoring organizations, to welcome you to this event today on multi-stakeholder approaches to addressing statelessness. The event has actually been co-sponsored by 17 organizations in total, so I'm not going to mention them all, but you can see them on the slide up there. And I do just want to pick out a few in particular. You know, for us, it's hugely important and welcome that we have 3 stateless-led organizations who are co-sponsoring the event today: State Free, Apatride Network, and CAPIN. It would also be, remiss of me not to mention the role of the Philippines as our state co-sponsor. And the Philippines is fast assuming a real leadership and champion role on statelessness, which is hugely welcome and will hopefully encourage other governments to follow suit. And also, it would be remiss of me not to mention UNHCR, who of course have the mandate on statelessness. And we all engage in great collaboration with UNHCR, but a particular thanks to the statelessness section and Marcella, for finding us this fantastic venue and organizing a lot of the logistics, without which events like this would not be possible. But although I won't mention all the co-sponsoring organizations, what we all share in common is a determination and a passion to end statelessness. And I think, the event today is about raising awareness. It's about understanding the importance of multi-stakeholder approaches and hearing some good practices of where that's worked. But it's a GRF, a Global Refugee Forum linked event. It's about trying to shine a spotlight on why statelessness is so relevant to implementation of the Global Compact on Refugees. And really that should be obvious when we think that statelessness is both a cause and a consequence of forced displacement. But there are occasions when statelessness is not always visible on these important refugee forum discussions. So hopefully events like today and a side event on Friday will help to address that, and having so many people here in the room will help to address that. I think if we go back 4 years to 2019 and the first Global Refugee Forum on Statelessness, I think a really significant event was 2 months prior to that. UNHCR held the high-level segment on statelessness, and Kate will remember that because she contributed to that. And I think that event was very exciting because it generated more than 300 pledges to address statelessness, many by states which have since been implemented. So in my region, Europe, both Albania and North Macedonia made pledges to address statelessness, which they've since implemented. And North Macedonia is close to becoming the first country in the region to eradicate all known cases of statelessness. But of course, statelessness is not just linked to forced migration. It's also, very much linked to development. And again, I was at the High Commissioner's Dialogue on development last December, and at times it did feel like statelessness was a little bit the elephant in the room, because obviously nationality is a gateway right to other rights. So to get good developmental outcomes, you need to address statelessness. And, likewise, we all know that discrimination is a root cause of statelessness. So, embedding statelessness in anti-discrimination agenda and forums is also critically important. And in terms of the theme of today, multi-stakeholder approaches, we know that we not only need to engage across all these themes, but we also need to engage different stakeholders. So UN organizations, governments, civil society, academia, and particularly important stateless people themselves. And I won't steal Patrick's thunder because he will be talking about the launch of the Global Alliance next year. But we are very excited. I'm honored to be on the task force for that. We are very excited by the potential of this new Global Alliance, but success will rest on its ability to engage. The resourcing is made available. And thirdly, what it professes, commits to do to better center stateless people, people with lived experience in leading these change efforts. And on that note, I'd like to bridge to our first panel. And we're delighted that that will be moderated by Kate Blanchett, a UNHCR Goodwill Ambassador since 2015. And right from the get-go, she's been working on statelessness. She's met with stateless people in Lebanon and Bangladesh. And as I mentioned, was also involved in facilitating a session with Maha at the high-level segment. So Kate, thank you for your championing role. And I know you're going to introduce the two stateless activists. So if I could invite yourself, Neha and Noor, to come on stage to grab a microphone. And I will then vacate and hand over to you, Kate. Thank you.
UN, so everything has to run like clockwork. Hello, everyone. It's a real privilege, a special privilege for me to be here to join you today at this vitally important conversation. It's, as Chris said, the issue of statelessness was in fact my reason for my initial engagement with UNHCR. Way back in 2014, I was asked to pledge support to the I Belong campaign, which is coming up to its 10-year anniversary. It's been incredibly successful in many ways. It's got a lot more to do, and that's why we're still here talking about it today. And the very first trip I made overseas was to Lebanon, and there I met with a number of families who were struggling with the very real challenges confronting them because of statelessness and the challenges that were literally thrown at them. And since then, I've had the opportunity to explore the impact of statelessness on individuals, including Maha Moho, who has a book, which she handed to me, but it's in Portuguese, which I don't speak. But anyway, yes. So I mean, that's how far she's become. She's such an incredible advocate, and she's here with us today. And I've listened to the stories of lifelong marginalization and exclusion, and I've heard, children who, on a daily basis, they cannot go to school, and their parents who are devastated because they can't access the basic medical needs that their children require. They can't even imagine a sense of a future, which is, as a parent myself, I really felt very acutely. But as Chris mentioned, eradicating statelessness, it's why we're all here. It sounds like a lofty goal, but the thing is, unlike many international issues, there are clear solutions to ending statelessness. And there's been considerable progress in addressing statelessness over the last few years, including thanks to initiatives like UNHCR's I Belong campaign to end statelessness, which has made statelessness more visible, because as these extraordinary women here will discuss, the invisibility of the stateless person is something that is one of the most difficult things to bear. And countries have reported progress, like Kyrgyzstan, for instance. On horseback, they solved the problem of statelessness. In 2019, they became the first country to solve all known cases of statelessness. And these successes can be attributed to a wide array of actors, but not least to the stateless people and then the communities they live in. The stateless people themselves are very responsible to that change coming about. Now, around the globe, stateless individuals have worked tirelessly to end statelessness in their own community and beyond. They have mobilized their community to advocate for their own rights through raising awareness and capacity building. They've advocated with lawmakers, and we have a lawmaker, a lawyer here today. And they've also laid out the challenges that are faced by stateless individuals and the need for pathway to citizenship. And they've also contributed directly to the development of inclusive policies and legal frameworks to address statelessness. And it is important that these vital contributions by stateless people themselves are recognized and amplified. Because at the same time, it needs to be acknowledged that stateless people are often still excluded from the process when we discuss solutions. They're still excluded from those conversations, and that needs to change. And the insights and perspectives of stateless people are invaluable in crafting policies that are relevant and effective and directly address the issues, the very real issues that they face. Policies developed with their input are more likely to be trusted and viewed as legitimate. And this trust is absolutely essential for fostering a positive relationship between stateless communities and authorities. And I'm honoured, very honoured to be here today with two extraordinary young women who are the change makers that I have just described. They're both formerly stateless people, and their journey to having citizenship has not been an easy one. And they've since obtained nationality and now use their experiences to generously advocate for the right to nationality of others. So first, we have Neha Guram from Nepal, welcome, who is an advocate and co-founder of the Citizenship Affected Peoples Network, which is an NGO advancing the cause of equal citizenship rights in Nepal. And up until 5 years ago, Neha was stateless because of gender discrimination in the nationality law, but has since been able to acquire Nepali nationality. So we'll hear more about that in a moment. And we also have Noor Aziza, who's a Rohingya refugee and advocate. And she's a director of the Rohingya Mayan Fianor. Did I say that right?
Mayan Fianor.
Exactly. That's why we need you here. Collaborative network, which works on Rohingya human rights issues with a focus on women and peace and security. And at the age of 8, she and her family resettled in Sydney in 2003, escaping unbelievable violence in Myanmar's Rakhine state. Despite incredible hardships, Noor has emerged as a very strong voice for Rohingya women. So welcome to you both. Thank you for being here. So as I said, your pathway out of statelessness has not been an easy one. But I think everyone here would like to hear about that journey from being stateless to becoming an advocate for the rights of other people to have nationalities. So maybe you could start with you.
Thank you so much for the question. So to share about my journey from being stateless to advocate, I guess I have to start with saying that as a child, I did not know that I was stateless. For me and my sister, we were raised by a single mother. And as a child, we thought that 3 of us, we were basically living our happily ever after. We were really happy. And then when we gradually grew up, it was then when we grew up that we realized that the society does not view us that way. Simply because my mother is a woman and she was a single mother, and the absence of a father became a formidable obstacle. Because first, we were denied birth registration. Second, I was also denied citizenship at the age of 16. And third, after I completed my high school, because when I was studying, the documentation was not very strict when I was small. So I got to study in schools, at least till high school. But then when I passed my high school and I wanted to continue my education in medical field, I wanted to become a doctor, who knows, right? So what, and that time again, I was denied my right to higher education, because without citizenship, one cannot pursue education in my country. And I guess it's same in many countries of the world. And currently, if you look, the documentation is becoming stricter and stricter, and even for children to get enrolled in a primary school, now they require birth registration. And those children who does not have, I guess I was lucky enough to at least complete my high school. And still on my statelessness journey. So while my friends were, they were busy weaving their dreams and career goals, I was busy running around government offices with my mother just to ask or just to plead for a piece of document. And that was when I realized that it will definitely not be an easy path to acquire citizenship. Later, my mother, she filed a case in the Supreme Court, and then we fought for 4 years. And it was also the time when our country was drafting its new constitution, and it was basically the draft constitution that came. It read like you need to have both your father and mother citizen of Nepal, and then you'll be able to get citizenship, which was really not acceptable to us. So we fought for citizenship. By this time, I was basically fighting with my mother. I was fighting for my citizenship rights. And I was also fighting, joining my mother and other amazing stateless activists and other impacted, non-impacted people who were really leading the movement. I was also joining them as a fresh high school graduate. And while all this was happening, and when my mother was fighting a case in the Supreme Court, the lawyer who was helping to plead our case, she also suggested that because I was denied education, I was still out of school at that time, and then she suggested, like, why not choose a black coat of a lawyer instead of a white coat of a medical professional that you wanted to be, and saying that and wearing the white coat, why don't you decide to treat the patriarchal illness of the society itself? So that was really inspiring moment for me. And then I basically, that was the moment when I decided I really want to continue on this path to fight for my rights, and not only my rights, about on this issue. So basically, I joined the law school. And the irony is that when I joined the law school, to join any other profession or any other school, I needed a citizenship certificate. But to join a law school, which the very law that discriminated against me, to join the law school, so the lawyers, basically, she spoke to the principal of the law school and said that we have her case filed in the Supreme Court right now. Just let her study for 5 years, and by the end of the 5 years, we'll have her citizenship. So based on that, I got to study law. And then when I studied law and then was also involved in the activism and also fighting my case, I guess that were small moments that turned me into an activist and advocate for this right. So I guess just quickly about like my journey from statelessness to activism to advocacy was basically inspired by a lot of other people who gave me chances, who believed in our cause, and who really gave us platform. So I guess that was my journey from being stateless to advocate.
I mean, education is a big part of that journey, and you know that you had the luck to have a tertiary education, and Noor, you've actually become a teacher. Like, you know, there's no more noble profession than that. But when you were 8 and coming from a very marginalized, generationally stateless group of people, the Rohingya, what was your journey like, and what were your expectations, and how have they changed?
Thank you so much. So just to give everyone a bit of an overview of the Rohingya. So the Rohingya, we are a indigenous people to Arakan, which is the Rakhine state of Myanmar, the western part of Myanmar. And we've been there for thousands of years. But our persecution started in 1942, where the Myanmar government initially started their genocidal acts by removing us from our own ancestral land. And in 1982, the Citizenship Law Act in Myanmar completely removed us and erased us from Myanmar. So they put us as illegal migrants from Bangladesh, and told us that we needed to apply for citizenship in 3 ways. The first way was full citizens Burman. Second way was associate citizens. The third way was naturalized citizens. And to achieve these citizenships were very, very difficult. Them ensured that it was going to be very difficult for Rohingya. So until today, we remain a stateless people. We don't have any rights to our ancestral land. Back to the question of my own story of being stateless. I was born in Arakan. And when I was just a baby with my 2 older brothers, my 2 older sisters, and my parents, we needed to move on to somewhere else, because the situation in Arakan was getting much worse. We were excluded from the system. We couldn't have access to schooling. We didn't have access to my own grandfather. His business shop was stripped away by the government. So everything was taken away from my family, and there was no future for us. So we left Myanmar by foot. We took every bus possible. We took every train possible. We took every boat possible. And we ended up in Malaysia, in Borneo. And in Borneo, we thought our lives were going to be a much, much better place. But in Malaysia, I was a stateless child for 8 years and a half. And in Malaysia, my life was not beautiful. I had to hide in the jungles. I didn't have any education. I had to sell. I remember me and my siblings, we would find newspapers from the streets and we would cut out newspapers, photos of celebrities and sell that on the street for even 10 cents just to ensure that we had food on the table. So that was the first 8 years and a half of my life being stateless in Malaysia. And this is just one story of many Rohingya currently living in the ASEAN region. So in 2003, I was very grateful. The Australian government granted my family and I asylum. And when I landed in Australia, I remember my family and I, we looked at each other and we felt the freedom. We felt the air touching our skin, and we were able to look at each other as a family and practice our culture, practice who we are as people, and celebrate that we were Rohingya. So in Australia, I ensured that I wanted to go to university. So I went and got my Bachelor of Education and my Masters of Peace and Conflict Studies from the University of Sydney. Let me remind you, I did not know how to speak English or write in English until the age of 8 years and a half. That was the first time I went to school. So this is just one of many stories of many talented Rohingya if given the opportunity. So my statelessness activism began 10 years ago, I would say. I am the co-founder and director of Rohingya Maya Whanau Collaborative Network. Maya Whanau just means women in our language. And this is just one way of ensuring that we practice our culture and remember who we are as people, as the military junta remains to try and erase who we are as people until today. So the Rohingya remain stateless, and then my ongoing advocacy is to ensure that the Rohingya are not forgotten.
Thank you. Now, Neha, you mentioned gender discrimination. And of course, everyone in the room knows there's many enormous challenges that stateless people face. You know, they can't open a bank account, they have no access to healthcare, to livelihoods are impossible, employment, no access to education, the freedom of movement is curtailed. But you did mention gender discrimination, and which means at the moment that should you wish to have a child, if you're stateless in your country, then you cannot, as a non-citizen, confer nationality upon your child. So can you tell us a little bit about what this gender discrimination means to you, and why it is essential to look at nationality rights from the perspective of gender equality?
Sure. So to me, what gender discrimination means is basically disempowering individual based on the stereotypical gender roles or social narrative of gender, and what a way to disempower a person by denying them their basic legal identity, by denying by refusing to consider them as an equal human being or as an equal citizen. So it's a great way, a strategical way to marginalize the already marginalized and vulnerable groups of people, and especially women, because when we say disempowering women through their legal identity, it basically means that, for example, in my country, when we say that you have the same citizenship card, it is of same size, same color, same set of information for both men and women, right? But then the rights emanating from the same identical document is different for men and it is different for women. And that difference is basically lesser for the women. And by that, I mean, women literally do not have, for example, me, I do not have, my brother, for example, has the right to marry anyone in the world and then confer his citizenship to his spouse, and also confer his citizenship to his children. By citizenship by descent to his children. But then if I choose to marry anyone in the world, then I do not have the right to confer my citizenship at all to my spouse. And even if I want to confer citizenship to my child, then the law says that you can only confer citizenship by naturalization, which is not a dignified citizenship, and it is a discretion of a country. So basically, when we say gender discrimination and nationality laws, I guess no matter how much empowerment, how much empowered a woman is, how much skilled a woman is, she knows how to do business. She's a very smart woman, but then we do not give her the basic legal identity, which she can use to, like Chris in his introduction said that citizenship is a gateway to all the rights. The legal identity is a gateway to all the rights. So basically, it's a great way, a strategical way to really marginalize and cut the people or disempower a woman by cutting or by disregarding their equal citizenship or equal human rights or considering them as equal entitled to equal rights as a citizen.
And when we spoke earlier, you were saying that there was a moment not too long ago where there was an opportunity to change those laws and that didn't happen. Is that right?
You mean the change in the laws?
Yeah.
So yeah, Nepal did have, recently we had the citizenship amendment. And in that amendment, we can say that it is a comparatively positive amendment because it has amended and included all the provisions or elaborated all the provisions given by the Constitution. But then the problem is in the Constitution itself, because the Constitution says that if you're a woman, then there are these list of conditions. For example, our Constitution divides women into 3 categories. The first is that the first category is a woman married to a Nepali man. Then the children becomes a Nepali by descent. The second category is a woman married to a foreign man, which means that the children be a naturalized citizen is eligible to be a naturalized citizen, and it's a discretion of the country. The third category is that the husband has to be an unidentified person. Then the children can be a citizen by descent. And this is a very tricky part because the definition of unidentified it is not clearly defined in the laws. It is left at the mercy of the interpretation of the judiciary, and a woman has to sign the self-declaration form that my husband is unidentified. Whereas the man does not have to do any of these declaration forms, and the citizenship or the legal identity of a man is as independent as the person. But the citizenship or the legal identity of a woman is attached to a husband. Is he a foreigner? Is he a Nepali? Is he unidentified? So it's basically even in my country, my friends and relatives and everyone says like, now you have a citizen. People are allowed to get citizenship from mother. Like, what is the buzz about? But then yes, we are allowed to get citizenship by mother. But then there are these conditions that attaches our legal identity to a father, to a son, to a husband. Right, so this is a legal change comparatively that we can do a self-declaration and get the citizenship, but it's very complicated because women has to fulfill so many conditions, and if you're not able to fulfill those conditions, then the children are basically stateless.
And it doesn't have to be that way. I think Noor, we mentioned before that you were a teacher, besides being a stateless activist. So could you tell us a bit more about how education plays, a crucial role from your perspective in empowering stateless individuals, and why you decided to make that your focus?
So as people, as a Rohingya person, we've been systematically removed from the education system. My own parents couldn't go to school, they couldn't go to university, and we've had 3 generations now that lack the skills to read and to write. And this is because of active compulsion for Rohingya to be removed from the system completely. So because of this, the Rohingya community, we really value education. And I've seen that in Kutupalong refugee camp in Bangladesh earlier. And 2 months ago, I visited Aceh PD camp that houses 152 Rohingya. And now the reason why so many Rohingya are currently taking really dangerous routes to Aceh is because the life in Kutupalong refugee camp remains dire, and the life in Arakan remains dire. So people are trying to look for a better life for their children. So when I was in Aceh, I ran sessions with the men and the women and the children, and there were 82 children in PD camp, 82 Rohingya children. And from what I heard from the mothers and the fathers is a thirst for education. They kept saying, we need education for our children because we know that this is the only way that our cycle of poverty is going to end. But besides that, we all want to go back home. We want a safe repatriation back to our ancestral homeland. But for us to go back to our homeland, we need our children to be educated to rebuild what was taken away from us. So we need to ensure that we can give refugee children the rights to education and the rights to rebuild themselves when we go back home, hopefully. So I guess to answer the question is education plays an important part to rebuild identity. Education has helped me rebuild who I am as a Rohingya. There's a lot of shame to being Rohingya nowadays. If you look it up, even if you Google Rohingya in Indonesia or in Malaysia, there's lots of xenophobia happening, lots of hate speech coming out against Rohingya. There was a video just 5 days ago that UNHCR posted of me where I just spoke about the Global Refugee Forum. I said one line, I said, this is what I want in the Global Refugee Forum. There were 4,500 comments. And they were not beautiful comments, not saying, oh, you're so beautiful, Noraziza.
Which you are.
Thank you. The comments were horrendous. There were comments saying, go back to your land. We don't want to hear from you. We don't want you in Indonesia. We don't want you in Malaysia. And I promise you, these people have not met a single Rohingya, and they don't know why we're fleeing our country, and they don't know that the genocide is still happening. So this education is really important for our children and for our people to ensure that we can rebuild ourselves when we go back home.
Yes, I mean, having been to Kutupalong, the pressure on the host community, and of course the Refugee Forum, one of the major conversation strands is to support the host community. And so to have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of stateless people languishing without an education, so many children there, it doesn't benefit anyone. So that might be a good segue to ask you both on the eve of the Refugee Forum, what you felt the key recommendation you'd like to make to the UN and NGO representatives to present more effectively that will involve individuals affected by statelessness to addressing these issues, and what actions in your own lives have made a difference, and what differences would you like to see?
I guess one thing that we really need to stress upon and really understand is the fact that stateless people most often are basically, we're like a prisoner inside our own country. Actually, even worse than a prisoner, because we basically do not have any right, any civil, political, or human rights, which even a prisoner has. Like, we do not have a right to education and everything. So I guess the one recommendation I would really like to give is that impacted people with all this open wound and open trauma and lived experience, we're still finding strengths to voice our concerns and be in the floor and do advocacy and activism. And then it's very important for UN, for organizations and other civil society organizations to recognize this and then ensure that they're supporting impacted people to really voice their concerns, because they're already facing so many traumas. And then we again have to fight in this ecosystem to find our place. So it's very important for all this ecosystem to ensure that impacted people are centered, their voices are heard, they are resourced, they are and unless and until I think this is a very efficient and effective way to achieve change, to achieve whatever we're trying to achieve, the equal citizenship rights, the dignified citizenship rights. Because unless and until we ensure that impacted people are centered, it's very difficult to achieve that goal. I guess that is one recommendation I really want to stress upon.
Thank you.
So in 2021, there was a military coup in Myanmar. And right now, the military has taken over the government of Myanmar. And prior to 2021, the general population in Myanmar thought the Rohingya were the terrorists. And there was a lot of animosity towards Rohingya from the general population due to propaganda by the Myanmar government. But now, after 2021 military coup, we're seeing the general Burmese population shifting their thinking and seeing that the Rohingya weren't the terrorists and the Rohingya are not the people the government portrayed us as. So there are lots of friends that I've made in the past few years Burmese friends that I've made, and they want to do more for Rohingya. And they've come up to me and said, I'm so sorry I haven't spoken up about the Rohingya prior to 2021. Because now because of the military coup, they're targeting everyone. So I guess my
Bang.
oh,
Sorry.
that's okay. This drop of water is so distracting as well. So I guess my first recommendation is we need the international community to work towards a democratization of Myanmar. And we need a safe repatriation back to our homeland. There is 1.5 million Rohingya in Kutupalong refugee camp, some children that were born there, that's been there for 15, 20 years. And it's a protracted situation. And we're seeing many Rohingya fleeing the camp in Bangladesh and in Arakan, going to Malaysia, going to Indonesia, India, and the situation is not getting any worse. So if we want to do something, we need pressure for Myanmar to be a democratic country and to accept the Rohingya as people and for reconciliation to occur for the Rohingya.
And communication, I guess, to those host communities to
Yes.
say, and support for those host communities who are welcoming in.
Yeah, absolutely. Like through my network, the Rohingya Women's Network, we've been working in Aceh. And what we've been doing is we've been organizing dialogue with the host community and Rohingya refugees. And how we do this is we got 5 laptops, and lots of young people from the host community are coming to use the laptops alongside the Rohingya refugees. And this way they're able to have conversations about each other, and they're able to get to know each other, and the Rohingya, we're able to explain why we've fled. So sometimes it's the smallest thing that you need to ensure that that dialogue is ongoing and that dialogue is happening, and that the host community understand why we're there to make sure that the animosity doesn't rise.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, I want to express my heartfelt appreciation to Niha Noor for being here today. And I think that this whole conversation really underscores a very important message, that the voices and perspectives and testimonies and insights of stateless people must be folded into the solutions that we so desperately need to work towards. And a reminder that every single statistic has a human face behind it. So thank you to both of you for being so generous, and to all of the people on Zoom. I think there's about 3.5 people on Zoom somewhere. And to everyone who's come today to spend their time here today. The progress is encouraging, but there is still so much to be done. So let's carry the forward momentum and end stateless once and for all, as Chris incited us to do at the beginning. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. If the panelists could, for the next session, please come on to the stage. Careful, there's water drops. Oh, Kate Blanchett, your phone? Thank you. You're welcome. So we'll start right away our next session. We fell back on time a bit. So my name is Alexis Ivashuk. I'm the founder of Opportunity Network. It's a coalition of stateless individuals, communities, and stateless-led organizations in the European Union. Our work focuses on helping stateless people connect to legal assistance. We raise awareness on statelessness a lot. Many people who should know about statelessness don't know much about it. And so we are trying to fill these gaps. And we also try to fill the gaps in the lack of connection between relevant stakeholders. So we would love to see more connections between relevant actors in academia, NGOs, UN agencies. There's much to be built there in terms of bridges. And so for this panel discussion, we have specific objectives that we'll be covering. The first one, it will be to educate the participants about the importance of localization and meaningful participation of stateless people in addressing statelessness, share some good practices and challenges of multi-stakeholder action to end statelessness, and lastly, to discuss the roles of different stakeholders in mobilizing action to achieve equal nationality and inclusion for all. For the panelists, on my left, I have Christine Leilani Sal, who's a Deputy Permanent Representative of the Permanent Mission of the Republic of the Philippines. Then I have Patrick Eba, who's a Deputy Director of UNHCR's Division of International Protection. And then I have Cristiana Bucalo, who's a co-founder of State Free. And I would also like to add my good friend and ally. I will have to attach that as part of your title all the time. And lastly, we have Adriana Quinones, who is the head of Human Rights and Development of UN Women Geneva Office. So we will start the panel discussion. I'll sit down for it. And I have some guiding questions for Christiana first. So, and first, contextual comment. In recent years, there have been attempts to increase the participation of stateless individuals and communities in addressing statelessness. A genuine multi-stakeholder approach should center stateless people on change-making efforts as key drivers and agents of change. So the main question to you is, what are the issues facing stateless people in Europe? And can you give some good examples of successful multi-stakeholder efforts you have been involved with and impact achieved?
Okay, yes, you can hear me, right? Okay. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Alexis, for the questions. Thank you for having me also in this panel. To your question, so I'd say the different limitations that stateless people in Europe face are happening on different levels. So obviously there's the individual level that leads to stateless people being very limited in their access to basic human rights. There are stateless people in Europe also that don't have access to legal identity documentation. They don't have access to open a bank account, to health services, and so forth. And all of these limitations are caused by, but also maintained by the political level, on which they're also facing limitations. And that is because there is a very, I'd say, rather low level of recognition on the political, but also societal level about the fact that statelessness exists also in Europe. And whenever I have had conversations with people about my own experience of statelessness, it was very hard for people, and I understand, because for those who have a citizenship, it's always been a given, right? So you never really question why you have access to very basic things. So it's been very hard for people to understand why or how statelessness might feel to those who are affected by it. And that is exactly why I was very, very confused when I started to research more on statelessness and how it is being addressed by the sector on statelessness. That there was a very, very limited representation of those who are affected by it in the sector that is working on it. So when we think about the limitations on a political level, this is also something that affects those who have had their own experience on statelessness and want to address the experience that they have made. Because one thing I think that we all agree on is that a lot of the reasons for statelessness, but also a lot of the solutions to solve statelessness are happening on the political level. So the political level is very critical. So if this level is the level that doesn't really recognize that statelessness exists, it is very important for those who are working in the positions of power to work with those who are in a position of expertise through their own expertise and their own lived experience. So a co-founder of State Free, when I started the organization, one of the things that I wanted to make sure is to build and bridge this gap between those who are working on the issues and those who are affected by it. So we started from the beginning, we made sure that our approach is community driven. So some of the examples and how we've addressed this is especially in the last year, because we work on community, but we also work on visibility, and we also work on equal rights. So what we did is, in Germany, we identified that the German government now has to go to improve integration migration in Germany. So they want to reform Nationality Act. So what we did is we approached German policymakers, but we also approached our community members in a way of co-developing different recommendations as to how the German Nationality Act has to change in order to include stateless people. But we also connected the German parliamentarians that we were working with our stateless community members. So we made sure to connect them through a dinner event in which they could learn about why we are recommending certain changes on policy level in order for them to change how stateless people are able to address or access their rights in Germany.
Thank you very much. And I should caution that for each question, we have about 3 minutes. I should have mentioned that. But each panelist will have 2 questions to answer. There is also a follow-up question. So Christiana, the follow-up question, what is your assessment of the recent initiatives undertaken by UN agencies, civil society leaders, including global and regional actors, aimed at strengthening the meaningful participation of stateless people?
So I think I will definitely recognize that there has been a huge change. So when I started to research statelessness, that was in 2019, and I was extremely confused that there are organizations that work on it, and I don't know about it, although I've been stateless already for 25 years. So I think it has changed from complete invisibility of stateless people in the sector to at least them being addressed. There has been this critique of it being very much tokenistic, but at least there was a change. And I think it has also changed from tokenism to being more community engaged. So this concept of community engagement has been becoming more and more strong. I think for this change to be, or for this approach to be more meaningful, I think we have to go one step further and go more into the direction of a mindset shift. I am very grateful for the different opportunities that I've had in the past to engage with people who are in positions of power. But I do have to say that depending on the institution and maybe also person you are confronted with, sometimes I just question whether or not the other institution or the other person actually values my expertise as an expertise, or if it's still seen as something that you do on top because it's just, I'd say, maybe on vogue in this times to work with community. So I think one more step in order to make this more meaningful is to really understand all of us can and will benefit from collaboration. There is no way of solving a problem with only the perspective that hasn't been even experiencing what is happening. So we need to have a very holistic approach. We need to include those who have had their own experience with those who have had the experience as to how to change the system, so we can come to a joint full solution that actually serves everyone, but also obviously mainly stateless people.
Thank you. Christine,
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And so the context statement, the Philippines has made considerable progress in addressing statelessness, including developing a statelessness determination procedure with civil society participation, and has strongly advocated for addressing the causes of statelessness in the Southeast Asia region as well. The main question, can you share about that engagement of the government of Philippines with various stakeholders in your statelessness campaigns?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. For the Philippines, we are really continuing, our campaign is really continuing to end statelessness and resolving those cases, which are primarily focused on 3 groups. The first one is the Sama Badjaos, as we call them. They are a nomadic seafaring indigenous group found in southern Philippines. The second would be the persons of Indonesian descent. And third would be the persons of Japanese descent. So the focus of the campaign is primarily on their nationality determination and to provide them with access to documentation. And this has been very successful because we have collaborated with we have many sectors collaborating on successfully doing this campaign, and it is led by our Department of Justice. There is a specific unit in that department called the Refugee and Stateless Persons Protection Unit, and they work together with local and municipal government units, with CSOs, and also with international organizations such as the UNHCR and UNICEF. So each of them play a specific role. For the national government, it's really providing the political support and the mandate and the roadmap for this campaign. For the international organizations, they are lending us their expertise in implementing and basically designing the campaign. And for the local government units, they are the ones providing us with the manpower and also the network. And all of them work together with CSOs because they are the ones who are really helping us with reaching far-flung communities in many different in those parts of the Philippines. So I really wanted to highlight the work of the CSOs because, as I said, they are the ones that really have helped us make these groups understand the importance of having documentation and also registering, even just simply registering their births. So in the case, for example, of the Sama Bajaos, the indigenous people that I have mentioned, it's really the trust, the key to really making them understand is building trust with them. And so the CSOs really are the ones that are helping us to make them understand the importance of such an exercise.
Thank you. And it's amazing how big of a difference it makes when you have a government that's constructive, cooperative, and has a positive attitude and taking on this challenge of statelessness. The follow-up question I have, can you talk, please, about the impact of statelessness on different communities in the Philippines and the importance of inclusion in addressing statelessness?
Yes, I think I suppose in any country it's the same as in any country, but in the Philippines the challenge is really the migration cycle. The challenge is that these people, for example, the Sama Bajaos that I've mentioned, they are a nomadic tribe and the seafaring tribe, as I mentioned, and they're so used to cross the borders of the porous maritime borders in southern Philippines. And the problem with them is that they don't really because of their nomadic tradition, they don't even have any documents, and even just the simple registration of their births. And as we have seen from the earlier panel, how important it is to have a documentation for them to be able to access just simple, services like socioeconomic services, the right to education, to health, and even to legal remedies, because these are considered vulnerable groups. As we know, women, children, and indigenous peoples are considered vulnerable groups, and they're really vulnerable to exploitation and even trafficking from certain sectors who don't really have good intention for them. So that's why the work that we have, as I have mentioned, we are developing even a legal framework, and for this reason, we have even established a legal assistance services for all displaced persons. Before you, I'm a little bit pressured because there's a time limit, but I really wanted to emphasize that actually in 2022, the Philippines adopted the founding law, which is a landmark law for us, because it means that all foundlings that are found in Philippine territory, whether in the Philippines or in any embassy or consulates abroad, are considered natural born citizens. So this is one way for us to end statelessness. This means that for foundlings who become Filipino citizens, they are accorded the same rights and privileges of a Filipino citizen.
Thank you. Am I too old to fit? No, it's a joke. I'm also stateless, so I'm looking for pathways. Patrick, next, you are next for the questions, the contextual statement. The I Belong campaign ends in 2024, so next year, at the end of next year. And even though statelessness has not ended, some countries have been able to make significant progress. Next year also marks the beginning of the Global Alliance to End Statelessness. The main question, why did UNHCR decide to support the establishment of the Global Alliance, and how will UNHCR transition from the I Belong campaign to this Global Alliance?
Thank you very much, Alexei. I think I would be remiss if I didn't start by saying how powerful, inspiring, and fantastic this event is today. UNHCR is deeply honored to be associated with this event. And this event is about a simple truth, that there can be no progress against statelessness without stateless change makers themselves and without the role that you are playing. You said it, Alexei, since 2014, we've seen unprecedented progress. We've heard from the Philippines speaking about the changes that have happened in terms of granting statelessness. We've heard Christiana speak about the role of stateless organizations and how by mobilizing, by creating a movement, they are catalyzing change in different contexts. Over the past few years, we've seen 30 states acceding to the statelessness conventions. This progress is about, again, a very simple reality that we should all recognize, that in the end, the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice, and it takes long, but in the end, it bends towards justice. Through the work that we've all been doing, we are somehow bending this arc towards justice through the progress we are making. Unfortunately, we are not acting well enough. Our progress in many contexts remains limited. We've heard the description of the situation of the Rohingyas. It is an illustration of what remains to be done. So today's event is not about complacency. It is about the urgency to continue action. But through the I Belong campaign and through the work that we've done together, we've learned 4 important things. First, that progress needs the mobilization of diverse stakeholders: government, international organization, civil society, and stateless persons. The second thing that we've learned is that statelessness shouldn't be seen as a technical, a complex issue, because at its core, it is about human rights. It is about development. The third thing that we've learned is that, in fact, if we want to make change against statelessness, we have to focus on prevention and reduction of statelessness. It is these lessons that have informed the work of the task force that led to the creation of the Global Alliance to End Statelessness. And this alliance is about doing 3 things. It's about mobilizing stakeholders. It's about repositioning statelessness as a key issue. And finally, it is about creating a community of action, a community of vision, and a community for change.
Thank you. And it's certainly exciting how much potential there is and how many areas still untapped in terms of cooperation and things we haven't tried. And it's going to be exciting times going forward. The follow-up question may be a bit tough, but hope you're ready for it. Since multi-stakeholder engagement may entail conflicting interests of different actors, what role will UNHCR play in balancing such competing priorities of the stakeholders? Top one.
But maybe let me start by saying a great thanks to all the actors, the members of the task force who are here in the room, who helped shape what the Global Alliance should be about. And they did recognize that we were bringing together multi-stakeholders. But the stakeholders who helped create the alliance didn't see this as a challenge. For them, it wasn't about balancing interests. It was about recognizing the power of synergies. Because change can only happen if we bring diverse stakeholders around the table to work out appropriate solutions. You know, we've heard the representative of the Philippines tell us that the change in the Philippines was made possible by the government working with communities to make change happen. No stakeholder alone can solve the problem of statelessness. And this is what the Global Alliance is about. It is that recognition that it is the power of synergies, stakeholders working together through advocacy, through dialogue, through sharing of experiences that we can see change. It doesn't mean that it will be easy, because to be honest, this is a struggle for human rights. It is a struggle for belonging. It is a struggle for existing. And in many contexts across the world, we know it is not easy. Because first, what you will be faced with is that first, they will laugh at you. Then they will deny that you are there. Then they will fight you, but then you will win. Because that is the power of the human rights struggle. And the alliance is not about scapegoating states. It's not about accusing some. It is about recognizing that this is a global struggle for which all stakeholders need to be around the table for us to find the solutions. But this is not cheap. It means that we need resources. We need more funding going towards stateless organizations. We need more funding to support this work, to do more research, to understand who is stateless in different contexts across the world, and work together as a common humanity to make statelessness peaceful.
Thank you very much. And I couldn't agree with you more. And it seems like maybe even a common human nature issue of finding ways to cooperate as opposed to looking for narrow perceived interests that are maybe just short term. And lastly, we will go to Adriana. I will provide you the context statement. Gender discrimination is one of the causes of statelessness. Unequal nationality laws cause wide-ranging human rights violations and can subject women and girls to gender-based violence. Gender discriminatory nationality laws can also result in the perpetuation of statelessness across generations. The main question for you: why are efforts to achieve gender equality in nationality laws are so central to UNW's mission, and how does UNW engage on this issue?
Thank you. Thank you very much to all for being here and to this alliance to really help women gain their rights. The main issue for UN Women is to end all discriminatory laws. I'll share with you why. Laws that discriminate and deny women and girls equal rights with men and boys betray their trust in society. They limit their participation in decision-making processes and in the processes that affect their lives. These laws signal that gender discrimination is acceptable, normal, and expected. So when a state allows gender discrimination in its nationality laws, it is implicitly endorsing the notion of women having an inferior status and second-class citizenship than men. There are several discriminatory laws, including right to inheritance, right to do certain types of jobs, but the mother of all discrimination is the one on nationality laws, because it perpetuates discrimination from one generation to the next. So for UN Women, this is a critical part of our work. If you think about legislation as a source of protection for women and girls, I'll share with you that equality in law is crucial to gender equality, and countries with domestic violence legislation, for example, report lower rates of intimate partnered violence. We know that. Similarly, the introduction of gender quotas has had a positive effect on the number of female parliamentarians, allowing their interests and concerns to be addressed within political discussions. So we already know that this legislation have an impact on women's lives. Based on available data, and I invite you to read a report, the gender snapshot for target 5.1 on discriminatory legislation, we know now that 120 countries and areas, 54% of countries do not have relevant laws in place in key areas of gender equality, including on equal rights to enter marriage and initiate a divorce. Even when laws are in place, enforcement can be a major challenge. Of these 120 countries, 67 countries lack laws that prohibit direct and indirect discrimination against women. This is why we have joined the Global Action to End Statelessness with UNHCR. That was developed in consultation with member states and civil society organizations to have key actions that can transform lives. Action number 3 is to remove gender discrimination in nationality laws. So again, gender discrimination is one of the causes of statelessness, and at the same time, gender discriminatory nationality laws can result in the perpetuation of statelessness across generations. Challenges in registering births and conferring nationality to children increases exposure to human rights violations, such as being forced to remain in an abusive relationship, hampering access to essential services, and complicating custody of children, and limited or no protection and meaningful participation in public life.
Thank you. And I will straight away go to the follow-up question. Does UN Women have specific programs and plans that aim to address gender discriminatory nationality laws and their impacts?
Yes. So we have 4 commitments. One is gender data and analysis that are critical to formulate evidence-based policies and frameworks and response plans that address the needs of refugee women and girls and population groups. And so collecting the impacts on women and their children of these discriminatory laws is going to be part of our work together. Also, the capacity building of refugee women in host communities and local organizations led by women, as they are underrepresented in decision-making processes and implementation mechanisms. Also, the social and economic inclusion and empowerment of refugee women, as we have seen from the testimonies today, including women with the ability to participate in decision-making, participate in economic life, can also give us entry points into changing legislation and into mobilizing communities. So with that, we want to address statelessness of women and children because they are often targets of illegal frameworks, excluded from registration and services. And so we see very clearly how one comes after the other, perpetuating different forms of obstacles for women and children to receive basic services and stay in a situation of vulnerability.
Thank you. And as a stateless person, I had to sometimes reflect on how at the very core of statelessness, there is the issue of various discrimination, xenophobia, sexism, and we have to really take notice of how vast majority of stateless people are stateless not because of what we did, but for who we are. We're being punished for having a certain ethnicity, religion, or for the fact that our mother is a female. And so that's something that's quite important, that's overlooked. There's plenty of room actually there to see how we can connect, the fight against discrimination and racism, sexism, and tie it into the fight against statelessness. So we are now officially in a Q&A part of the discussion, and we have some prepared interventions. And then after that, I believe we do have some time for a few questions as well. So first up, EU Asylum Agency, Nina, you had an intervention. Yes. Great. Microphone. Should I just give one? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alexis, and thank you very much for this kind invitation. We're happy to be here, of course. Indeed, my name is Nina Gregory. I'm the Executive Director of European Union's Agency for Asylum. And indeed, we have a short, let's say, contribution to this panel. You know that, of course, our agency is there to help and support member states of European Union to reach a common European asylum system. This is our regional framework for international protection. And in this context, we work together with you member states to effectively identify and also address, of course, statelessness in the context of the asylum procedures. So this is important because statelessness affects both an applicant, of course, with his or her access to rights and the potential outcome of their asylum procedure. So it is very relevant as various of the top countries of origin for asylum applicants in EU have historically very large stateless populations. So though we are not submitting here a former GRF pledge, in the coming years, our agency will definitely continue to support member states' efforts to tackle statelessness. I will give you some examples of our continuous work. In the area of training, we are currently drafting a training module on statelessness and inclusion in the international protection. And this is with a huge cooperation of our European Network on Statelessness and, of course, Hungarian Helsinki Committee. And I'm really thankful for that contributions for their ends. And these modules will increase asylum officials' awareness of forms of prosecution specific to statelessness, and it will enhance, of course, their capacity in assessing applications submitted by stateless people in Europe. We're also planning to develop another module focusing on statelessness in the context of registration when it comes to asylum procedure, and we are integrating statelessness issues horizontally into our existing training modules. So with regard to analysis and situational awareness, which is a big part of our work, we publish every year a flagship report on asylum in EU+ countries, which includes a section focusing on issues of statelessness in the context of asylum. Our continuously updated country of origin reports, which are freely available online, and you can take a look at them, also provide information on the situation of stateless people in their country of habitual residence. And finally, we will definitely continue to incorporate considerations about statelessness in our technical guides, in our practical tools, and of course, our capacity development efforts. This way, I do hope that our European Union's asylum agency will contribute to effectively identifying and addressing statelessness and limit negative effects of the applicants, of course, as much as possible. Many thanks.
So we'll take all the interventions and then we'll have some time for responses and closing remarks. So next up we had the US intervention. Yes, great.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Becky Kinsey from the US Department of State. Ending statelessness is an important issue and one that merits this type of spotlight and attention. For the US government, we view it as an issue of social inclusion and respect for human rights. And echoing what we heard earlier, a key US objective in addressing statelessness is to promote equity and inclusion by combating discrimination in both nationality laws and procedures. This includes racial, ethnic, and religious discrimination, as well as discrimination against women. For our part, the United States is looking internally at what we can do domestically, and we're also actively advocating against arbitrary and unlawful discrimination in nationality rights in numerous venues and multiple channels, from engaging in regular bilateral diplomacy and engagement to leading and collaborating with many represented here today in multilateral fora such as the Human Rights Council. We also continue to be the largest single donor to the UNHCR, the UN body mandated to combat statelessness. We plan to continue our leadership to helping to end statelessness by announcing new pledges at the Global Refugee Forum that further our commitments in this area, but those announcements will come later this week. Still, the most powerful champions, as I think we've all seen today, are those that have experienced statelessness and can speak firsthand to its impact. We really honor the work done by the affected community-led movements and civil society organizations that tirelessly advocate for families and children and spearhead change. Thank you for sharing your stories today and your recommendations, because we're listening. As the I Belong campaign to end statelessness draws to a close, the United States looks forward to collaboratively working with all stakeholders through the Global Alliance to End Statelessness, especially those most impacted. Thank you for reminding us all of the need to truly take a multi-stakeholder approach, not just because it's in vogue, but because it's essential.
Thank you for that. And lastly, we have University of Essex intervention.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here, not just as someone from the University of Essex, but also as co-chair of the Global Academic Interdisciplinary Network, GAIN, that was founded under the first GRF, courtesy of paragraph 43 of the Global Compact on Refugees. Unlike most of the GCR, paragraph 43 expressly refers to stateless persons, such that GAIN research, education, training, and solidarity since the first GRF has included examples around statelessness. We have been there working on these issues right from 2020 onwards. Going forward, working with colleagues in the Global Academic Interdisciplinary Network and UNHCR, I am planning to map and analyze the rights of stateless persons and those at risk of statelessness in 36 countries with respect to the 1954 and 1961 conventions. This will be an effective aspect of protecting people who are either stateless or at risk of statelessness. And this is going to be a collaborative, multi-stakeholder intervention. From academia's perspective, the GCR is about refugees, asylum seekers, internally displaced, and stateless persons alongside the host communities. From our perspective, fragmentation is the enemy of protection. I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. And it looks like I did a fairly good job as a moderator in keeping the time. So we do have some time for a few questions. So if anybody would like to ask a question, really, no competition. Okay, then. Oh, great. We have one person.
Thank you very much. My name is Gopal Shivakoti. I represent Asia Pacific Refugee Rights Network, APRIN. It's just an observation and probably a part of question as well. How do we see the inclusion of the statelessness, people with regards to disaster response? Because often in our part of the world, in Asia Pacific, in the DRR process, documentation of the people of maintaining a database has been very feeble, it's very weak. And so whenever disaster happens, it could be, COVID-19 or other pandemic or any other, natural disasters, then especially refugees, IDPs and statelessness are not being part of the radar. They are not within the radar of protection or service delivery, So is there any thoughts with regards to, when we advance our advocacy or research or education or campaign or civil diplomacy, whether that particular, issue could be taken up, to bring on a spotlight so that, in the event of disasters, the statelessness becomes, the priority based on the Sendai framework and other regional or international instruments. Thank you.
Thank you. That's certainly an interesting question, and there's certainly a fine line between natural and political disasters. And does anybody want to take that on? Yes. Okay.
Yes. Well, for the Philippines, actually, this is very relevant for us because we experience a lot of natural disasters, and we do have a lot of internal displacements of people whenever national disasters occur. In fact, in 1 year, we have an average of 20 typhoons a year, and this really affects many communities. So I would say that because of this, the government has already instituted many mechanisms to be able to, whenever a disaster happens, there is an interagency, what we call an interagency task force. There really is actually a national agency, the national disaster risk management agency, and this is an interagency task force that already deals and with different aspects of how to deal with displacements or displacement of our people whenever a natural disaster occurs. So this has already developed over time. Perhaps one area where we still need to really develop is in the data collection, because we still sort of sometimes lack data because of the movement of people. For example, if they are displaced, but eventually these displaced people move somewhere else. So sometimes the data sometimes does not match up. But we do have a national agency in place for occurrences such as this.
Thank you very much. I think I would like to start first by thanking EUAA and its executive director, Nina Gregory. Thank you for taking the floor and for speaking to your commitment on this issue of statelessness. It's just fantastic to hear that and to know that also EUAA is working closely with ENS and other civil society stakeholders. And certainly this is an aspect that we will very much welcome, including in our expanded partnership between EUAA and UNHCR going forward. I would like to also thank the United States for your steadfast, long-standing leadership and support on the issue of statelessness. It is just fantastic to be able to count on you, and we look forward to your support and involvement in the Global Alliance. It will not be possible for us to make the Global Alliance such a powerful instrument of change without our allies and supporters, chief of which we believe is the United States of America. And so we certainly count on your continued support and count on being able to work with you as part of this alliance going forward. And of course, thank you, Jeff, for speaking about the importance of academia and research, building knowledge and understanding around the issues of statelessness is critical. Then to the very specific question that was raised around how do we ensure that we address statelessness in the context of disaster, catastrophe, but more broadly in the context of displacement. UNHCR is currently finalizing the strategic plan on climate action, and as part of it, we are seeking to put a spotlight on the issue of inclusion and on the issue of preparedness that covers refugees, IDPs, but also very importantly, stateless persons. We've seen in many contexts that stateless persons are not included in adaptation plans linked to the climate emergency, but we've seen that where there is effort to address these issues, it can lead to results. About 2 years ago now, we issued a fact sheet in which we documented some of the good practices relating to climate change and disaster. And we looked at what happened in Mozambique, where following the cyclone, there was a drive and an initiative to ensure documentation for people who otherwise would be at risk of statelessness. We've seen similar examples in different contexts, and it is the documenting and the expansion of some of these experiences, example of how we can do statelessness prevention in the context of climate change and disaster that is critical, thinking about and prioritizing adaptation and inclusion of stateless persons in national adaptation plans will be critical for the future that we want to see in making sure that societies are resilient to the impact of climate change. We should not leave statelessness and leave stateless persons out of these efforts. So I will stop here and turn it back to you, Alexei.
Perhaps, yes, Adriana or Adriana.
Thank you. I wanted to share with you that between 2000 and 2010, legal reforms related to gender equality and nationality rights took place in several countries, such as Algeria, Egypt, Iraq, Morocco, Tunisia, and Yemen. And these countries passed laws that gave women the same rights as men in granting nationality to their children and allowed them to secure residence permits, opportunities for proper employment, and ensure equal access to education and healthcare. Many times we don't think of this group of countries as countries who can be examples, but I think it's important for all of us to know. For Egypt, for example, in 2004, they reformed their nationality law to ensure the right of women to confer their nationality to their children, and also ratified the CEDAW Convention with no reservations. In Iraq, in 2006, they reformed the 1963 law, which did not allow Iraqi women to grant their nationality to their children, and now they can. And also for children born outside the country and who were born outside the country to our unknown or stateless father. And in Morocco in 1999, a committee of scholars made recommendations on reforming the family code in favor of gender equality. And in 2007, the parliament approved nationality law, which operates retroactively and enables women to grant their nationality to their children on an equal basis than men. So just to share with you that there's progress being made, that there are lessons that we can learn from many countries, and that we can expect these rights to really be part of the 24 countries that are lacking this type of legislation.
And Christiana, you have the last word, well, until I have it.
Okay, just in light of time, I will maybe just speak to one thing. Thank you also to the US for stating that you are honored to work with stateless populations or stateless individuals on the issue, because you think that it's essential. And I think that's something that is barely ever stated by states, and gives a very, very good example of how important it is, and how valuable it is to both or all stakeholders to work together on it. And maybe just to add to that one more point, because I couldn't finish it when I responded to the first question, is also just to highlight that it works, because the experience that we have made in Germany has shown that while it was a bit slow start in the beginning, and a lot of institutions ignored us, that the way that Patrick mentioned it in the beginning, they don't listen to you, they don't see you, then they laugh at you. And now it's been 1.5 years, and yesterday we were involved in an expert hearing on German nationality law, and I think it's safe to say that's probably the first time that a stateless person was able to speak in the parliament during an expert hearing on Nationality Act, and that is basically because we were able to find a very community-driven but also multi-stakeholder way to do policy and advocacy.
Thank you, everyone. And so we're wrapping up. There is an event on the 15th, but the details are not on my sheet of paper. Maybe somebody could comment what that is about, 15th of December. Why do I have it on the schedule? No? There's a side event on the 15th. Monica, can you tell us?
We have a side event during the GRF on day 3, so do not miss that. It's in the afternoon on the 15th.
Can you? Oh, sure. So we have one more message. Oh, yeah. Yes, bit of confusion here. So yes, we're wrapping up. Thank you everyone for coming. We hope that it was a valuable experience for you and you have something of value to take home and think about. We are wrapping up. Please give a big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you, everyone.